crazy. 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 I tried to load up my Minecraft world last night, only to be met with this message, which I thought was a joke at first. Mojang had been making a lot of those as pop-ups, but actually, nope, it's reality, and I am banned from my world for at least the next 6 days, but I did some digging, and it's even worse, because sources indicate these bans were carried out by AI, and can actually affect us all. But why? Well, it's not just me, it's also happened to SB737, as well as Evident, as we can see. But what has gone so horribly wrong at Mojang, and how did this happen to me? Well, I want to break this into 4 parts to be as clear as possible, but let me just get a start by saying, hello, I'm reqs, and if you've never heard of anything about my channel before, I am always espousing the value of Minecraft as a single-player game, which is what makes this ban so laughable. Ever since I first started playing Minecraft console 14 years ago, I've kept the same world no matter what platform I'm playing on, and so what's funny is I never really play multiplayer or an SMP, which is what makes this ban so amusing to me, because I've obviously not been doing that in multiplayer, because I just don't play multiplayer, and so I just don't really care if I get banned from it. I wanted to laugh this up as if I'd been banned from North Korea. It's not like I was SB737, where he was actively live streaming when this happened to him.
I've been banned for 6 days from playing Minecraft. There's no way.
Man, I really feel for SB737 here. This was the ending of an SMP apparently that he had to miss because of some stupid troll, but thankfully this is an issue that doesn't affect me, except actually, do you know how I like to play my same world on the Xbox, the Switch, and the PC? The only way to keep one world and have multiple, the same copy across all your devices, if some of those devices are consoles, is to use a Realm subscription. And so because that Realm subscription, which I am paying for, technically counts as multiplayer, I am now banned from the only live copy of my survivor world that exists for the next 6 days, which sounds ludicrous enough by itself until you realize that because I'm paying for that subscription, and that's the only multiplayer I am technically playing, I have proof from inside that world that I am the only person that ever accesses this. Here is my Realms timeline that I was lucky enough to take a screenshot of about a day before this happened. You can see that the only time that I play multiplayer is on this world by myself, and the only other person who has access is me on a different account that I haven't accessed it from for at least a year. So I am now banned from this survival world that I only play solo. That's the entire point of it. I am banned from this world because, obviously I've been committing hate speech or discrimination. They won't even tell me which one. They just group them together even though they're very different. But you know what's even more fun here? It's the fact that I'm not just banned from multiplayer, and indeed, as a consequence of that, banned from my realm that I am paying a subscription for, which by the way I checked, they have not extended my subscription. They are taking my money for my solo world that they are now not allowing me access to without any proof required whatsoever. There is a help button here and I submitted an appeal, but it's a Saturday, it's a weekend, they're not going to get round to those appeals till at least Monday, and that's assuming that they can take the evidence of I wasn't on a server. I can't prove that I'm not committing hate speech or discrimination because I haven't been anywhere to commit it. It's like asking me, did you speed in North Korea at 6 a.m. last Wednesday? No, but what do I show you? My lack of flight tickets to North Korea? It feels a little Byzantine by itself, but I haven't just lost access to servers and realms, or indeed multiplayer on all my worlds. They have this big multiplayer disabled flag, although not on the Cursed Creative world here, apparently, which is intriguing to me. But you can see every world now has multiplayer disabled, but also, if I go to load up a world, because I would like to show you, for example, my creative world, guess what? It's going to give me a little reminder that you're a bad boy who's been committing hate speech or discrimination. This is beyond messed up by itself, but it gets even worse, because get this, my main menu is messed up, it's missing a button, tell me if you spot which one it is, but also, I can't go to the marketplace. For whatever reason, they've decided decided to suspend access to the marketplace, which means even, I mean, like, first of all, they're saving me money. Great job, Mojang, not letting me, they don't let people who commit hate speech buy mine coins, thankfully. But also, I can't access the stuff that I've already bought because that missing button under me is the profile. When I do decide to load up a world, let's go into my creative world right here after I click the reminder that yes, I'm an awful hate speech and harassment committing person, or sorry, hate speech or infringement, or I forget what it is, even though I literally just looked at it because I refuse to acknowledge it. But the one big complaint that this is what the Minecraft menu should look like, to be fair to them, they disabled the browse add-ons button and also the dressing room. You cannot change your skin if you are banned from multiplayer. Okay, Mojang, what sense does it make that I can't change my skin? I can understand why I don't have access to the party system. Like, okay, yes, of course, you can't let people who are committing hate speech into the parties. If I was really doing that, maybe we could argue, but why can't I have access to my single player realm? Even if you figured other people could be on there, you could ban me from speech or something. This is the most ridiculous ban I've ever seen, and honestly, my immediate instinct is to say that double jeopardy isn't allowed, and so I guess I'm finally allowed to use this list. But my second instinct, double jeopardy isn't allowed, and so I guess I'm finally allowed to use this list. But my second instinct was to get this fixed, and so how do you fix this if this also happens to you, as it seems to be a bit of an epidemic in the community right now? Well, it's really simple. There's a help button that you can click from inside Minecraft that will take you to a website where you can submit an appeal. According to Minecraft's chat player reporting tool FAQ, an investigator, which I take to mean a human, will be able to look at that report and they'll be able to understand all of the context and hopefully fix things very quickly. And so I submitted my report last night, fairly confident in the knowledge that by today I would be exactly fine to have everything going, except guess what, it's been 24 hours and no investigator has given anything towards this. It's the easiest slam dunk case in the world, but I think that the people who did this and the mass reporting tools kind of have something in their favor, which is that Mojang as a company clearly don't seem to work weekends. This isn't me being impolite, and maybe it's even normal, but there was a update posted on Friday, the 26.31 update, and just for a fun update on that, we still don't have a change log. It was out on Friday, it's been 48 hours, and again, it's a weekend, and so they'll get round to that on Monday. The same thing clearly seems to be true for these investigators, because you could look at my case for a second, immediately see that, this person doesn't play multiplayer, and see whatever the, the evidence is clearly going to be fake, and you could move on in a second, but yet they haven't been able to, because they clearly do not work on the weekends. And my other way that I would have to get this fixed is, I'll be honest, I do have Mojang PR connections because of all the time that I've been doing this. My instinct would be that I can simply go to my Mojang PR connections, but guess what? They also don't work on the weekends, so we have Mojang PR connections, but guess what? They also don't work on the weekends. So we have a crazy system set up where Mojang has an automated system of some form that will ban people, but the humans that can unban people, none of them work on the weekends, meaning that at any time that this system stays in place, Minecraft is a game where you are inherently playing at the permission of other people. And let's explain how this works, because I think that now we have to go into the next obvious question, which is what even caused this? The answer is that this is obviously downstream from the chat reporting, which caused a huge stir when it first released in 2022, but if you're not familiar with it, then basically Minecraft is a game that's had massive multiplayer success, even as the single-player Minecraft guy. I will concede that that is very true, but one of the things that they had to deal with as the game was growing is how to actually manage this multiplayer function. So in 1.16, they had the basic idea that what if there was a social interaction screen where you could disable chatting with certain players at different times, or what if you could indeed just hide chat altogether for certain players? However, in 2022, this was deemed to be not enough, and whether for legal reasons or for social goodness reasons, you can decide for yourself, but Mojang decided they needed a chat reporting system, and this was controversial because it wasn't just a way to report people for hate speech, bullying, harassment, sexual solicitation, and personal threats, but also it was something that was going to affect private servers. Here is Mojang on their own website confirming that yes, player reporting will function for players who join servers of any size, including private servers. They recognize that private servers function independently from Mojang Studios, but they also believe that they must follow the rules, and so that means that every player has the ability to report every other player, no matter what server they are on. This was a huge deal when it first came out, and although it mostly went away over time, it seems as though there are a sizable chunk of people who are still upset with this, and those people are behind what you are seeing right now. You see, the actual solution, although saying what caused this is someone just reported me using these funky systems, the deeper answer to what caused this seems to be that there are a group out there who are responsible, and at this point I have to make the clarification that I always do in these videos, that this is technically speculation, because just like how I can't prove that I didn't play any multiplayer, or I can't prove, because I don't have the North Korean traffic cams, that I wasn't speeding that one time, I also can't prove this person did what they claimed, but YouTuber It's Me James did an interview with people who claim to have done it, and very few people claim responsibility for stuff like this they haven't done, so we'll take their word at least face value for now. So what is the why and what is the how of what they did here? Well, first of all, how they did this is actually really interesting. The reason so many YouTubers all got this same hate speech and discrimination claim at the exact same time is because Mojang treats it as a very high priority report. Their words, not mine, and they say that the AI that Mojang uses is not very good, we could say, and that automation system just automatically will ban anyone within 8 hours of them making these reports. They have a tool, and that tool has shockingly the ability to ban you from multiplayer even if you and them are not in the same server, even if you and them are offline at the same time. It could be that you've been offline for 10 years for all Mojang cares. It just needs to, all they need to know is that you have an account registered to Minecraft and what that account name is, and if they make the right reports at the right time for hate speech and discrimination, Mojang just says, yeah, we're gonna act first, and we're gonna, actually work out if this is correct later, which is a shocking revelation, which kind of actually brings us into the why. Why would someone do this? Why are they targeting these YouTubers? Well, their reason is simple. The reason they want to show how bad the reporting system is because Mojang have a reputation for not really taking action on these things. So, given that this happened, they're trying to show that Mojang won't take action, and even in the case of big YouTubers, and even in the case of very public figures, they're still not doing so, because it's a weekend apparently, and so basically they wanted to get the reactions of these people to further their cause. And so a bit of me does feel a little bit grimy here, being like, oh, these people are doing this so that videos like this one will be made, and it almost makes me want to share the exact opposite, but also actually, no, there shouldn't be any tool, there shouldn't be any ability whatsoever for any automated system to do this. And so for my last part here, what would usually be a conclusion where we explain what's going on, I just need to say this shouldn't have been allowed to happen. You should never make decisions using automated processes if you aren't willing to undo them with those same automated processes, or at least that you won't won't have a human available at the same time. If we ignore the concept of free speech just for a moment, because whether that applies to hate speech or discrimination or alleged hate speech or discrimination is a different thing based on where you live, I think innocent until proven guilty is a key part of the law in every part of the Western world, and a principle that is being breached when you believe a few anonymous people and for ridiculous things. And if you are going to use AI, you need to be 100% sure, and crucially, because you're never 100% sure, you need to have the exact same system ready to review, because otherwise we have a world where, like I mentioned, it's guilty until proven innocent. And even then, even in a world where for some reason we think it's right to treat people as guilty based on a few anonymous reports, even then, when you're talking about people that, like, let's imagine I go into every single multiplayer world and just start dropping the worst slurs and discrimination and hate speech, even in this world, you've still got to say, yeah, the only thing we'll do against that is to block their access to the chat, not their access to the entire multiplayer system. No machine should ever have the ability to do that to me, and I think the only reason this is possible is to provide just a little bit of really important philosophy, because I know people like to do that here. One of the real things we love to do in society is have a super extreme thing that only applies in extreme edge cases. So we'll say the only time it's acceptable to do X is if you're talking about a pedophile or a Nazi or whatever the bad word of the time is. And so people from one side of the spectrum love to call the others one of those words, and people from the other side like to call their least favorite people the other word there. People love to use these words to dehumanize the other type, and what's crazy about it is that on a corporate level, Mojang has said, yeah, there are obviously normal rules that should apply, but these stop applying when even the vague notion that someone might be, a racist hate speecher comes into play, and I think that that is a little bit of a mess up, I would have to say, but I think that if we're really trying to boil down the mistake here into 4 parts, there are 4 huge monumental mistakes that Mojang have made that I think they need to fix. I mean, obviously I'm hoping that when the PR team or when the investigators come back on Monday, everything will be fine, but I think there are 4 serious things that do need to be reviewed. The first huge mistake is that they've allowed reports to take a place against accounts that are not playing multiplayer. I'm technically on a realm, but I haven't left a chat message. There should just be some categories where you cannot report someone if they have the data that goes directly against it. If you have the data, use it. The second huge mistake is allowing machines to verify reports rather than human beings. I understand that they want to act quickly, but if you think it's something that's really important, hire a human being rather than using a simple machine. Even if you just think the human being needs to review the claims, you can't have people not have access to a game they've played for an entire weekend because you're deciding that you don't want to pay someone for that time. The third huge mistake is to ban online play at all, rather than just chatting or playing with others. Obviously, those types of bans do exist. Mojang has the ability. I don't, if my only crime is hate speech or discrimination, I'm not going to be able to do that without chat. I'm especially not going to be able to do that in my single-player world, Mojang. But the final mistake, the one that is probably breaching platform terms, like the ones they're on, or indeed just consumer rights legislations around the world, is the fact that Mojang has used an automated system to remove access to a product that I have bought and I have paid for. That is not reasonable. Again, you could maybe say that in the terms of service I'm not allowed to do certain things, but that probably requires there to be some burden of proof beyond, oh yeah, someone said they were doing it and we didn't really feel like checking. That is a very serious faux pas and a very anti-consumer move that someone at Mojang just got through with because, yes, in 2022, you had to say that, like, oh yeah, online safety is our #1 priority. You had to say that, like, oh, getting rid of hate speech is obviously our #1 priority, and so they made janky systems like these, but if you've ever heard someone say this is one of their top priorities, all they're actually saying is that they don't have any priorities. You can't have a bunch of top priorities, and so I think that Mojang really needs to think about how they're going to have a system like this, because if it's happened to me, as you can see here, if there's a tool and if there are all these other people they're claiming it's going to happen to, I think that that's something that should be taken very seriously, and that's not what we're currently getting from Mojang, at least not that we've seen so far. I think this is a mess up, and I think it's one that they could easily fix, but that's the end of my rant for now. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you've enjoyed this creative world, then let me just say that as long as you don't commit any hate speech, obviously I won't be selling this map to anyone who commits hate speech, but for those of you out there who aren't committing discrimination or any of the other bannable offences, you'll be able to pick up the creative world from the marketplace later this summer. It's officially gone in certification, it's something I'm very excited about, and I'll let you know more via the channel. But yes, the 12 years of creative builds are all going to be available in one download. It's going to be a lot of fun. But with that said, I hope you all enjoyed, because I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Wait, what happened there? That was weird. Bye. Wait, what happened there? That was weird. I just realized they can probably get away with, charging you for a service you don't get, because their big convention is called Minecon. They've been telling us their plans this whole time. Okay, goodbye.
We first came here, we were falling from
Well, what if
a man has been found lying dead at the side of the road with oozing, elongated wounds to his back. To solve the murder, a local official calls all the farmers in the village and demands they all bring their tools to the main square. In the square, each man is set to lay down his sickle, and then something curious starts to happen. In the rising heat of the morning, flies begin to descend, all landing on a single sickle. Its owner buckles, falling to his knees, and admits to murder. This is from a 1247 book, The Washing Away of Wrongs by Song Sur, and it's the first writing we have of an empirical approach to forensics. But okay, big deal, anyone could have just swapped the sickles or used their neighbors. But forensics today are much more accurate, right? Fingerprints support investigations in over 70% of murders and DNA evidence in more than 90%. But then you also read an article like hair sample that put man into prison for 28 years turned out to be dog hair.
That is not science, that is not justice.
See, in 2009, the National Academy of Sciences published this 350-page report stating that, with the exception of nuclear DNA analysis, no forensic method has been rigorously shown to consistently demonstrate a connection between evidence and a specific individual. And they also said that some tests do not meet the fundamental requirements of science. So we asked people to rank 5 famous forensic techniques, all of which are still being used in court. Okay, 5 forensics techniques here, and I just need you to rank them in order of accuracy from least accurate down here to most accurate. So what do you think?
I don't know if I'm gonna nail these.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know which one to put first yet.
Okay, hair. What are you thinking?
I think hair is last, eh?
I would probably put the hair on the top 2.
I feel like hair would probably be the easiest to
fake,
if you like.
I think hair at the bottom, because if it's not got the follicle intact, just hair in general. Do you think?
Yeah.
Hair has always been an object of interest for crime scene investigators, and before DNA, they would look for the microscopic similarities
Yeah.
Hair has always been an object of interest for crime scene investigators, and before DNA, they would look for the microscopic similarities in the surface and the cross-section of hairs to try and get a match. For example, analyzing how rough the fish scale-like structure of the surface of the hair is, or how the pigment is distributed through the hair shaft.
The examiner's trained eye can learn many things. Is it human hair? Of what race? Animal hair? What family? This vital information may help to establish guilt or innocence.
Between the 1970s and 1999, the FBI used this against defendants in 268 cases. But when they later re-examined this using DNA as evidence, it completely flipped the field on its head. And it turned out that even the most experienced FBI examiners would routinely claim they had a match between hairs that were from 2 different people, and they sometimes couldn't even tell the difference between a human hair and a dog hair. Out of those 268 cases that used microscopic hair analysis, 96% were declared false. 33 people were already sentenced to death, and 9 were already executed by the time the errors were found. Today, the FBI only uses hair as evidence if it can be supported by DNA testing, which is why microscopic hair analysis goes to the bottom of this list. What do you think of bite marks?
On our crime scene. It's Dracula here.
Least accurate is gonna be pretty close to bite marks, I think.
Midway.
Midway?
Lost. That's last, bro. That's not realistic.
Okay. Bite marks at the top. The idea behind bite marks is simple. If you can use dental records to identify a deceased person, surely you can identify a perpetrator by the bite marks left on a victim. Since the 1950s, bite mark analysis has been used in thousands of cases. But then, some experts, like forensic dentist Mary Bush, started looking into the method more deeply.
There was no scientific exploration into bite marks before they were used in a court of law to say that this was even a feasible technique that you could do.
One study from the University at Buffalo used a set of model teeth to create 89 bite marks in cadavers, alongside controlled bite marks made in wax. And out of those 89 bite marks made in skin, none of them matched the measurements of the ones made in wax or the original model teeth. In fact, when they compared the bite marks in skin to a wider collection of 411 model teeth, it wasn't even the original model that made the bite mark that was the closest match. After 12 studies, their conclusion? Bite mark transfer to skin is not reliable. Skin isn't a good medium to leave an imprint of someone's bite mark. It's soft, it's squishy, and it distorts under pressure. But despite all this, there's still been no ban, and bite mark evidence is still allowed in courts worldwide. We asked Dr. Bush for a comment, and she said that while the scientific method is happy to discard an old and disproven theory, the justice system prefers consistency and a historical precedent. So even the new flurry of evidence wasn't enough to get bite marks out of court. In fact, bite marks have been used as evidence as recently as 2025, which is why it gets the second worst spot on our list. Blood, if you don't have DNA and you're just using like kind of the patterns that it leaves along the ground, how they splat,
Right.
like the picture that blood on a crime scene could give you.
Okay. I'm looking thinking of putting blood at the end, but like I don't know.
Then put blood at the end.
Okay, I would go blood then.
Second.
Second place?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So, bloodstain pattern analysis. When someone is injured, the way their blood pools and drips into the environment is in a distinct pattern. And in 2020, Wired actually did an episode with a crime scene analyst on how these different stains can be interpreted. You can use physics and biology to rewind the clock and extrapolate where in space the blood must have come from. This all started in 1971 when chemist Herbert Leon McDonald published Flight Characteristics and Stain Patterns of Human Blood. In this book, McDonald described how you can use the width and length of a stain to calculate the angle of impact, and then, using trigonometry, trace that back to the point of origin of the spatter. The book quickly became the foundation of bloodstain pattern analysis, and everyone was using it. In fact, McDonald even established a bloodstain institute where thousands of US police officers would enroll. The Supreme Court of Iowa actually referred to the practice as relatively uncomplicated, so they didn't require proof of its reliability. They were happy to go ahead with McDonald's test that he did alone in his basement. And soon enough, bloodstain pattern analysis was used in courts all over the states. But here's the problem. Plotting the flight path of each bloodstain using trigonometry assumes the trajectories were straight lines and gives this common origin point, which suggests the victim was standing up. The issue is McDonald, and then many forensic investigators after him, and even Wired, failed to account for the effects of gravity and drag, as obvious as this sounds. When you include these in your calculations, the common origin point lowers, and you can see that in this example, it's more likely that the victim was actually sitting down. The first study to measure the baseline reliability of bloodstain pattern analysis was only done in 2014. That's over 50 years after it started being admitted in court. And a large-scale study from 2021 found that analysts come to different conclusions about a way a stain was made, but 8% of the time. And that's because the same stain can come from many different mechanisms. And the fact that blood differs from person to person depending on how many red blood cells versus the plasma you have. Men actually tend to have a 15% higher concentration of blood cells than women, which makes their blood more viscous. Nowadays, investigators have new software which uses fluid dynamics to help them map these complex 3D scenes. So bloodstain pattern analysis is improving in accuracy, which is why it gets this middle spot on our list. Okay, but surely fingerprints must have a lot of value in identification. How unique do you think fingerprints are?
I think they're pretty accurate.
But then fingerprints. That's gotta be one. That's number one. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, you use fingerprints on your phone, you unlock it, you pay stuff, right?
Because fingerprints are unique. Even when you have a passport, like they scan you when you enter a country.
On March 11th, 2004, a terrorist organization operating in Madrid set off explosions on 4 commuter trains. The attack killed 193 people and injured thousands more. Quickly after, the police found a finger mark on a detonator bag left behind, and they matched it to Brandon Mayfield, a lawyer in Oregon. There's only one problem. There are no records of Mayfield even leaving the US. He doesn't even own a passport. So how could he have pulled this off?
I honestly felt like I was being framed because I hadn't been out of the country for over 10 years.
But despite that, the fingerprint evidence against him was considered so damning that Mayfield was incarcerated. But this wasn't a glitch, it was built into the method from the start. In 1890s Kolkata, the city's rich career criminals were avoiding jail by paying people to serve sentences for them. It was a good tactic, since at the time, there was no practical way to identify a person, so the criminals were getting away with it. 3 officers, Edward Henry, Azizul Haq, and Hemchandra Bose, started taking the prints of everyone who came through the station, but they quickly ran into a problem. When they got a suspect in, how could they cross-check their prints against their own database when there were 10 prints per person and thousands of people coming through? They needed a classification system. Hawk proposed that they should look at whether a fingerprint has a whorl. It's this spiral pattern that a person might have on their fingers. And because each of your 10 digits can either have a whorl or not, there are a total of 2 to the power of 10, or 1024 ways your whorls can be arranged. So the officers just built 1024 wooden pigeonholes to organize these fingerprints. Okay, but what if, like me, you don't have a whorl? Well, 2/3 of the population actually don't. So the system had to go further. Once you have a pigeonhole number, you go for additional layers of identification. Some of the additional categories that you could assign included whether you had a plain arch, which was denoted with the letter A, or whether you had a tented arch, which was denoted with a T. Similarly, you could look at which side of the finger this loop structure is on. And with a few more identifiers like these, we get a much more in-depth classification. One that would go on to be used for the next 100 years. Famously, the world's first fingerprint bureau, which was established in London in the New Scotland Yard, used this fingerprinting system.
I started in 1988 with the Metropolitan Police in forensic services.
Could you paint a picture of what the room would have looked like with all these pigeonholes? How big was this space?
So we're looking at a space of about 30 to 40 meters in length and about 10 to 20 meters in width. The collection at the time was about 3 to 4 million, I think.
That is intense. Yeah, that's wow.
It's a lot of fingerprints.
Now, today's system takes into account these little details along the ridges. It's called friction ridge analysis. And well, it's no surprise that combing through pigeonholes for these would have taken weeks. But online databases today can basically do it in minutes. No way this phone works. Hello? Why are you calling me through this thing? You have no data. Just get Saley. You know, I travel a lot for filming. I actually just got to London. I always want to be able to connect to the internet as soon as I land. And with the help of today's sponsor, Saley, it couldn't be easier. First, you just scan the QR code and download the Saley app. Then you search your destination, the UK, for example. And next, you just pick a data plan. And finally, during checkout, apply the coupon code Veritasium to get your exclusive 15% discount. No more dodgy cafe Wi-Fi or unexpected roaming charges. All you need to do is just switch on your mobile data when you land, and that's it. Saley works with all iPhone and Android devices, and once an eSIM is installed, you can keep adding plans in the app for each new trip. And in the rare case that your phone isn't compatible with Saley, you can get a full refund at no questions asked. I've gone with the Saley Ultra plan, which gets you unlimited data globally with access to airport lounges, fast track services, and NordVPN, NordPass, NordLocker, and Incognito on top. So to stay connected on the go for an affordable price, you can scan this QR code, download Saley, and get 15% off your plan with the coupon code Veritasium. So I want to thank Saley for sponsoring this part of the video, and now back to our case. So if all the details are painstakingly placed into these databases, then where's the problem? How was Brandon Mayfield falsely accused? Well, say you have a mark from a scene and you want to run it through the US fingerprint database. You can't actually search the database using the whole mark, because you first need to identify a number of features on the print. These are called minutiae. It's where the ridgelines split or end.
To even search the database, you need a minimum number of minutiae points. It very efficiently searches hundreds of million prints, but it cannot make an ID. So what it does, it pulls out the most similar ones, a list of 10, 20, up to 40 in some jurisdiction, and then the human examiner has to compare.
This works in theory, but the problem is how these minutiae are identified in the first place.
What is interesting in my research, published scientific peer-reviewed research, the same print, one examiner sees only 3 minutiae and one sees 10 minutiae. So 10 minutiae is enough to run the database. However, if the others saw only the 3 minutiae, they couldn't run it. So whether you find the criminal or not depends on the luck of the draw. Even if you give the same pair of prints to the same examiner twice, 10% of the time, they will reach a different decision.
And these disagreements are from controlled studies where the examiners had no context about the crime, but in reality, they often do. As many as 42% of the requests that fingerprint experts process state whether a suspect has a criminal record.
In a recent case,
do. As many as 42% of the requests that fingerprint experts process state whether a suspect has a criminal record.
In a recent case that I was involved, where a firearm was involved and a forensic firearm expert had to decide whether a bullet was actually fired from the firearm of the suspect, on the formal submission form that was given to the forensic scientist, it said that it's homicide. It said the age of the suspect and the victim, and it even said the race. It said the suspect is black and the person who died, the victim, was white.
For over a century, experts have held so much trust in fingerprints that in the FBI case for Mayfield, the examiners claimed with 100% certainty that that was his mark. This likely happened because when another fingerprint expert was brought in to verify the match, they probably already knew the verdict of the original analyst. And they probably also knew the stakes of what a match could mean for the case, which made it all the easier to agree with the initial verdict. Even the fingerprint expert working for the defense agreed that the mark matched Mayfield's fingerprint, when in reality it belonged to a man who had links to terrorist organizations in Spain. This is the impact of conformity bias.
So all of this pressure, all of this context and intervention in the forensic science, I say to the police and the prosecutors, leave the forensic examiners alone. Give them independence of mind to make decisions based on the relevant scientific evidence and do their work rather than telling them about the case.
Well, if there are issues with all these other techniques, why don't we just use
DNA?
DNA first?
Yeah.
DNA's got to be, surely.
DNA should be top. It has to be DNA because
Okay.
you already know everyone have their own DNA.
But even DNA analysis can fall prey to the same problems. Back in the 80s, you had to do this with a sample the size of a dime of blood or saliva. But today you can do it with less than a pinhead's worth. In fact, just this year, a 61-year-old cold case was solved with just 0.4 nanograms of DNA. But the paradox is, the increasing sensitivity of DNA analysis could also be its downfall. In 2012, paramedics in California responded to a call about a severely intoxicated homeless man. They treated him and took him to the hospital, but along the way, they also picked up traces of his DNA on their equipment and gloves. Then later that night, they responded to a murder of a businessman and they accidentally transferred the homeless man's DNA to the victim's fingernails. Because of that, the homeless man, Lucas Anderson, was charged with murder and he faced the death penalty, despite being hospitalized at the time the crime occurred. He spent 5 months in jail before the charges were finally dropped.
So this is trace DNA and touch DNA, where you can get this kind of DNA transfer that happens.
I see how that could be abused easily. So my DNA could be in a place I've never been before.
Yeah.
And if DNA is deposited under the right conditions, say a dark, dry place, it can persist for hundreds of years.
And if, for example, somebody touches a door handle, well, loads of people are going to be touching a door handle. So you're definitely going to get more than one profile off of there.
These samples with multiple DNA profiles are called DNA mixtures, and they have been found to be the most common source of error in DNA interpretation.
Some people shed more cells than others. So the majority of the DNA that you're getting off of that door handle may not be from the last person who touched it.
The problem in interpreting a mixture comes down to how a sample gets analyzed. The most common way to do it uses short tandem repeats, or STRs. DNA is made up of 4 nucleotides, G, A, T, and C. And the STR method looks at how chunks of DNA, usually 3 to 5 nucleotides long, repeat in your genome. For example, GATA, GATA, and so on. For one person, they might have GATA repeat 6 times, whereas another individual might have 9 repetitions. A standard STR test will look at around 20 locations on your genome for where these repeats can occur, and it will count how many repeats you have in each location.
So if you're looking at 20 of these markers, and you've got one from mom and one from dad, you're actually getting 40 different genetic markers coming back. So the chances of somebody having the same combination of genetic markers as you is around 1 in a billion.
Here's what a crime scene sample containing just one contributor looks like on an STR test. You can see how it's easy to compare this to a sample from a suspect. But if the crime scene sample contains DNA from multiple individuals, then their profiles will begin to overlap, all with varying signal strengths. And the more individuals in the mixture, the more difficult these results are to interpret. With 4 or more individuals, it becomes increasingly hard to compare a clean DNA profile from a suspect to the mixture. And now it's hard to say whether the suspect was actually in the sample. You just can't tell which peak belongs to who. It's kind of like having 5 people talk to you at the same time. You can hear all the noise, but it's really hard to single one out. Now, some labs claim they can reliably separate samples of up to 5 individuals. And to test this, the National Institute of Standards and Technology ran a controlled study in 2013. They sent out a DNA mixture from a fictional crime scene to labs all across the US. Their aim was to see how different facilities interpret the same mixture of 4 people's DNA profiles. 69% of the labs got the analysis wrong, and despite the sample being deliberately complex, only 21% of the labs deemed the mix inconclusive and not possible to give a comparison on. After NIST published the study, new checks have been imposed to address some of the issues, but there's still no lower limit on the quality or the quantity of a DNA sample that labs are permitted to analyze, and labs themselves still decide if something is too mixed or too partial. Now you might think that using the entire sequence genome would be better, but that can actually introduce different kinds of problems. Now your analyst has access to hair color, eye color, ethnicity, and that could introduce discrimination in the way the sample is being analyzed.
This is where the guidelines and the guardrails have to come in here. What are the genetic markers that are being used for this? This is where the really interesting ethical questions come into it. People think that DNA is like the silver bullet that will answer everything. And it is true. DNA evidence is incredibly powerful. It's amazing for identifying individuals. But DNA can never be taken out of context.
Now, the point of this video isn't to bash forensics. I think it's still better for us to live in a world where forensics exist rather than one where they don't. But if we want to keep calling forensics a science, we need to continue the work of the people who actually made this video possible, who've dedicated their lives to already reassessing the field and making it as accurate as it is today.
Do you think it's fair calling this a forensic science?
I still think there's science in it because you're trying to do the best with the information you have, which is oftentimes what science is trying to do, is with the information you have, this is the conclusions you make until you know something better.
Hey, one last thing. Last year, we launched the official Veritasium game, Elements of Truth. It's a trivia game with 800 questions covering science and technology, and we on the team get quite competitive, so every time we play, things get very saucy. See, there's this mechanic where you can't only guess an answer, you have to put down a number between 1 and 10 to gauge how confident you are that your answer is right. So it gets very fun very quickly. The game is coming out later this year, so if you're interested in pre-ordering, you can click the link in the description, which will take you to the Elements of Truth website. Thank you so much for your support in this project, and as always, thanks for watching.
investigation with the claim itself. While the infringing content is listed as investigation with the claim itself. While the infringing content is listed as Li Ming's appear to be covered quite commonly in ideas in your own.
Oh, this is so good. Wait, this is so good. The goal is just to do a whole classic melon farm here. Please, you gotta believe me. I mean, I'm tempted to, but that's some real awkward timing. What can I do? What can I...
Not gonna do that to me. Squawk! They're not very good at squawking on command. Are you gonna say anything? Oh.
The x-axis, and then
have the next rim get toggled on right after. You can also use move triggers
investigation with the claim itself. While the infringing content is listed as Li Ming's
12th of July, 2016. 12th of July, 2016. Taipei. A messy hotel room. A teapot boils in the corner. You've opened a cup of instant noodles, but your stomach won't cooperate. You pace, overthink. This is a trap. You never should have gotten involved. But it's not like this is your first time. You have done this before. Everything worked out back then. This should be fine too. Maybe some noise will calm your nerves. You sit down and turn on the local TV. CCTV footage from a bank ATM. It looks like a robbery, but an unusual one. The thieves aren't forcing the ATM open. They're just standing there, waiting for the cash to come out. Most people would find it strange, fascinating even. Not you. To you, this is the worst case scenario. They have you on camera. Now you're stuck with that and a bunch of people looking for you. Thankfully, they still don't know who you are. You glance back at the TV. Well, you're officially screwed. But you kind of expected it. For years, your organization outran its destiny, dodging investigators, international authorities, and bank security systems around the world, all thanks to a multi-tool weapon capable of penetrating the toughest defenses. But after years of getting away with it, you all became a bit too confident. Mistakes piled up, and maybe one more slip-up, your slip-up, is all it takes to uncover the final piece of a puzzle investigators have been assembling for years. This is the story of how the most sophisticated bank robbery ring was hunted down after 5 years on the run. And after that, there was no rollback. Around 2007, several banks in Eastern Europe and Russia started reporting something strange. Their ATMs were being robbed, but without any brute force. Criminals would simply approach the machine and have cash dispensed automatically. No credit cards, no PINs. The machine would magically release large sums of money without any human authorization. This was a rather bizarre incident. Until that moment, most ATM robbers weren't known for their subtlety. Their methods were, well, you can see for yourself. But it seemed that someone had managed to crack the code, and it made perfect sense. If you think about it, ATMs are just computers, and if you can breach a computer, you can technically breach an ATM. Security researchers began investigating and soon confirmed their suspicion. The ATMs had been hijacked by malware. This malware was capable of capturing pins and magnetic stripe data, instructing the machines to spit out cash. There was, however, one downside. The attack required an insider, such as an ATM technician or anyone else with a key to the machine. Surely this was better than blowing up an ATM or destroying half the building, but finding an insider was not always that easy. The first attacks around 2007 were primitive and rudimentary, but they showed that hijacking ATMs could be a profitable business if the process was a bit more streamlined. Fortunately, criminals did not have to wait long. 2 years later, a solution was presented. In 2010, cybersecurity researcher Barnaby Jack gave a presentation at a hacking conference about ATMs. Putting himself in the shoes of a robber, he tried to find a way to make machines dispense cash automatically. His goal was to prove that ATMs could be hijacked and that the banking industry needed stronger defenses. While examining the machines, he discovered they used two keys, one for dispensing cash and another for accessing the internal computer. The cash mechanism was very secure, but the second key had a vulnerability that allowed access to the ATM's motherboard. The motherboard is basically the brain of the ATM, connecting internal components and communicating with the bank's networks. If you can access it, then it's relatively easy to take control of the machine, which is exactly what Jack demonstrated. He loaded custom firmware onto the motherboard and rebooted the ATM, gaining full control, including the ability to dispense cash. His investigation proved something important. Attacks no longer need, which is exactly what Jack demonstrated. He loaded custom firmware onto the motherboard and rebooted the ATM, gaining full control, including the ability to dispense cash. His investigation proved something important. Attacks no longer needed an insider. They could simply open the machine and breach it. But the true highlight of Barnaby's investigation came when he demonstrated that it was possible to remotely control an ATM. By bypassing authentication protocols, he could upload custom firmware and they could simply open the machine and breach it. But the true highlight of Barnaby's investigation came when he demonstrated that it was possible to remotely control an ATM. By bypassing authentication protocols, he could upload custom firmware and take full control. This meant that just by pressing a button, he could dispense cash at any machine in the world. He called this technique jackpotting, and it was essentially a cheat code to make a lot of money in an easy and fast way. While we don't know if audience members were up-and-coming criminals or if Barnaby's findings reached the dark web somehow, one thing is clear: jackpotting was turned into a business. Speaking of cheat codes, the word on the street is that subscribing to this channel is a great way to hear more stories like Carbonac. We put a lot of effort and time into each one of these videos. Literal blood, tears, and sweat. But everybody's very happy with the production, including our editors. Right? Anyway, subscribe and like this video to help us create even greater content in the future. Thanks again, and now back to Carbonac. A Ukrainian bank contacted an antivirus company at the end of 2013 to investigate mysterious money losses. Cash was simply disappearing from their ATMs, but the bank could not pinpoint the cause. Right from the get-go, investigators thought that ATM computers were injected with malware, just as happened back in 2007. However, in-depth examinations of several ATMs returned no information. The malware in question was found only later, and not in the ATM itself, but in one of the connected systems. It was a type of banking malware called Carburp. It was pretty common and not something people worried about, often used by script kiddies, nothing out of the ordinary. Still, if used correctly, Carburp could steal sensitive data like credentials and passwords. This meant one thing: the problem was not the ATMs, it was the bank. Researchers started digging deeper and soon realized this was only the tip of a much bigger iceberg. At the start of 2013, an Eastern European gang began targeting Russian banks, and within just a few months, had breached 50 banks and 5 payment systems, stealing around $12 million. By the second quarter of 2013, the group was ramping up to bigger operations. They began developing more sophisticated malware and attacking international banks. Ukraine fit the pattern. It was simply part of the group's natural evolution. The modus operandi was pretty similar in all attacks. Threat actors would send an email to a bank employee with a document attached that exploited 2 vulnerabilities in Microsoft Office. They began developing more sophisticated malware and attacking international banks. Ukraine fit the pattern. It was simply part of the group's natural evolution. The modus operandi was pretty similar in all attacks. Threat actors would send an email to a bank employee with a document attached that exploited 2 vulnerabilities in Microsoft Office. Once clicked, the document would download malware into the computer. This malware was called Carbonac, and it would eventually give its name to the entire criminal organization. Carbonac used a specific configuration called a NUNAC, giving the malware its combined name. Carbonac was not just banking malware, but a full-featured backdoor. Combined name. Carbonac used a specific configuration called a NUNAC, giving the malware its combined name. Carbonac was not just banking malware, but a full-featured backdoor. Think of it like one of those Swiss Army knives. Each tool has a specific purpose. For example, name. Carbonac was not just banking malware, but a full-featured backdoor. Think of it like one of those Swiss Army knives. Each tool has a specific purpose. For example, opening, cutting, or fixing. Carbonac is pretty much the same. Each tool serves a specific goal, and together they allow attackers to hide, move laterally, and spy. All of them combine for a specific goal: to take control of the banking systems. Once the malware is downloaded, the first tool of the knife opens up. Just like in a regular Swiss knife, the tools are grouped by their function, and in this case, one of the main utilities is stealth. The success of the malware highly depends on its ability to stay undetected, so it tries to, quite literally, become one with the machine. For example, it hides in legitimate processes, and even deletes part of itself to remove evidence. On top of that, it can hide its communication with attackers by disguising it as normal web browsing. These elements make it very hard to detect once users download the malware. Then, Carbonac displays its second tool, movement. The malware needs to understand the ins and outs of the system. For this reason, it needs to be extremely adaptable. It can detect which antiviruses are running and change its methods depending on this and other programs in the device. It can also enable remote access protocols, allowing attackers to remotely control the infected computer. But Carbonac was not only undetectable and highly adaptable, but it was also a stealthy espionage tool. It monitored users' behaviors, logging keystrokes, taking screenshots, and even studying how the user connected to the internet. This allowed hackers to mimic the employee's activity and connect to the command and control server, which is the centralized system hackers use to send instructions to the infected computer. But attackers were not only using Carbonac to take control of the banking systems, they also used additional tools that expanded the malware's capabilities. Think of it like a corkscrew in the Swiss knife that also includes a can opener on the side. For example, they used a supportive tool to scan for specific banking software, alert attackers, and modify payment details. If an employee would submit a payment, the malware could quietly replace the account number, redirecting the money to the attackers. Moreover, they also used legitimate remote control software tools, additional backdoors to ensure persistence, and a range of supportive tools to penetrate systems, steal credentials, and execute remote commands. This was impressive. The attackers had managed to turn a mediocre banking malware into a multi-tool capable of espionage, lateral movement, data harvesting, and much more. However, this was not the main reason why those behind Carbonac had been successful for years. It definitely contributed, but their brilliance lay in what they did after infiltrating the system. This was not the main reason why those behind Carbonac had been successful for years. It definitely contributed, but their brilliance lay in what they did after infiltrating the systems. Carbonac quickly understood that to steal money effectively, it was not enough to design stealthy malware. You had to be stealthy yourself. So before moving any funds, they prioritized observation. They recorded employees at work to mimic their methods, studied banking manuals, and even analyzed each different banking software in depth. The goal was not to have surface-level knowledge. The goal was to understand a bank just like one of their top-level employees. Once they had the knowledge, it was time to cash out. And for this, they used different methods. One of the ways was to manipulate the SWIFT system and send money to fraudulent accounts overseas. The SWIFT system is one of the most secure networks in the world. Banks use it to communicate with each other in international transactions. They use different methods. One of the ways was to manipulate the SWIFT system and send money to fraudulent accounts overseas. The SWIFT system is one of the most secure networks in the world. Banks use it to communicate with each other in international transactions. It's not easy to manipulate, but Carbonac was observant and persistent, and their monitoring paid off. The recordings of employees helped them understand, step by step, what a routine transaction looked like. This ultimately allowed them to blend in their fraudulent transactions with thousands of legitimate ones. And to further cover their tracks, they always made sure to limit the amount of money stolen to $10 million per bank. This would reduce the chances of the bank's anti-fraud teams doing a full-blown investigation and uncovering their scheme. Another one of their methods was jackpotting. Hackers borrowed the Barnaby method, breaching the network of computers connected to the ATM and triggering the cash disposal. For this specific method, they established a long-lasting relationship with organized criminal groups, first Russian and then Moldovan, who supplied individuals to collect the money. These individuals are known as money mules and would coordinate with hackers on the time and place of the ATM attack. There was also a third, and perhaps more interesting method. The attackers would temporarily alter bank account balances, inflating the figures and transferring the difference to accounts overseas. For example, an account with $1,000 would have been altered to show $10,000. Then $9,000 would be transferred outside the bank. This method was also used with the money mules. Each money mule received a bank account and a credit card with a specific amount of money. For example, $3.33. Then the attackers would run a database update. This move would essentially update all accounts that had $3.33 in them, injecting all of a sudden thousands of dollars into them. Now all hackers had to do was withdraw the cash, keep some, and send the rest to Carbonac. The success of these methods was impressive. It left desperate clients with millions of losses. For instance, one bank lost over $7 million through ATM withdrawals alone, while another lost $10 million from the manipulation of its accounts. And well, you're probably wondering, why didn't banks notice? First, Carbanak transactions were almost undetectable within the massive volume of everyday transactions. Second, many banks only check their accounts every 10 hours or so, giving attackers several hours to manipulate accounts and restore them before they noticed. And when they actually noticed these bizarre incidents, they were simply attributed to technical mistakes. In some cases, it's suspected that banks simply didn't want to come forward about breaches. Whatever the case was, Carbanak continued cashing out from 2013 to 2015, stealing millions from banks all over the world. But the most interesting thing is that for Carbanak, this was only practice. Their ultimate goal was to refine their methods and figure out how to make more money. By 2014, they were already expanding to new horizons. They allegedly breached several retail organizations, media outlets, and PR companies, most likely searching for inside information to gain an advantage in the stock market. There are even reports that they were breaching government agency networks looking for inside information. Unfortunately, this part of Carbanak is not well documented and is most likely speculative. We don't know whether they were using these campaigns to simply make money or if there was something more to it, a connection with a bigger and more capable sponsor. In 2014, Kaspersky learned about a conference in The Hague organized by Europol. They saw it as the perfect opportunity to share their investigation. Perhaps authorities could provide the missing pieces of the puzzle. And after explaining how In 2014, Kaspersky learned about a conference in The Hague organized by Europol. They saw it as the perfect opportunity to share their investigation. Perhaps authorities could provide the missing pieces of the puzzle. And after explaining how Carbanak had spent years robbing banks undetected, plenty of people became interested, especially banking experts. Several days after the conference, researchers started receiving plenty of messages and calls. Authorities and financial institutions were sharing clues, incidents, and data related to Carbanak. However, there was a particular piece of information that seemed juicier than the rest. The Dutch police had located what they believed to be one of Carbanak's command and control servers. As we previously mentioned, a command and control server is the malware's control panel, the place where attackers send instructions to the infected computers. And if you can find it, you can disrupt the entire operation. Europol seized this command and control server and analyzed it to uncover more clues about Carbanak. They eventually discovered the source code for a botnet panel. A botnet is essentially a network of zombie computers that attackers use to infect other computers. It basically speeds up the infection process in huge infrastructures like Carbanak. Within this panel, investigators discovered a critical mistake. If an HTTP request was made to the server with a /0 at the end of the URL, it would trigger an error message. This behavior was so specific that investigators could technically scan the entire internet for systems with the same mistake, which would eventually lead them to the gang's command and control servers. This method proved successful. Most of Carbanak's infrastructure was disrupted. The thing is, these criminals are not your average cyber crooks. This was their business, their way of life. And when authorities took down their command and control, they simply adapted. Instead of relying on Carbanak, they started using other off-the-shelf tools, such as Metasploit and Cobalt Strike. And once their infrastructure was rebuilt, they returned to business as usual, targeting banks as well as focusing on transaction fraud. While hackers continued robbing banks, the investigation slowly died out. It became harder and harder to track their movements and coordinate a full takedown. Bureaucracy and legal matters also got in the way. Why? Well, imagine this. Threat actors would attack a bank in Kazakhstan via Uruguay. Then the money mules would travel to Brussels and Madrid to withdraw money from ATMs connected to that Kazakh bank. Just to investigate this case, Europol would have to coordinate with authorities from all of these countries, each requiring different documents and procedures. So whenever the joint force would get all the permissions, the attacks would be long gone. On top of that, much of its infrastructure was rented, making it even more difficult to locate them. But everything changed 2 years later, when Carbanak attempted its bold
So chat, we're gonna beat Blue Scoop in Hell. We're gonna try crowd throw in Hell. Funny story, I don't even think I need the, I can just turn on no clip and just play this level and I think I'll be fine. So we're just gonna play it and see what I can do.
Indubitably. And
On top of that, much of its infrastructure was rented, making it even more difficult to locate them. But everything changed 2 years later, when Carbanak attempted its boldest move in history. They wanted to strike a blow that would crown them as the greatest bank robbers ever recorded. But at this point, they had grown too confident, and that confidence made them careless. They started making rookie mistakes, and even though investigations had died down, they were still being watched, and not just by Europol. In 2016, a passerby in Taipei noticed two foreigners behaving oddly near a bank ATM. One of them stood outside, constantly monitoring the street. The other lingered inside for an unusually long time. After locking eyes with the passerby, the man outside quickly went in to speak with his partner. Moments later, they both fled. Something was not right. The passerby approached the ATM. His suspicion turned out to be right. A stack of cash, about $1,000, had been left behind. Who would abandon money like that? He immediately called the police. Security footage revealed two men stashing hundreds of dollars in duffel bags. The bank confirmed over $20,000 was missing from their branch. Perhaps it was just an ATM malfunction, and a couple of low-life criminals just happened to get lucky. However, this soon proved to be much more than an ATM glitch. Over the next few days, more and more banks reported the same phenomenon. Their ATMs were spitting cash. This was no longer a standalone issue. It was a full-blown heist. Within 48 hours, attackers had breached 22 branches and 41 ATMs across Taiwan, accounting for losses of nearly $3 million. To prevent further damage, banks temporarily froze withdrawals from more than 1,000 cash machines. Citizens, already anxious due to a massive typhoon sweeping through the region, spiraled into paranoia as the media fed them with constant news about the biggest heist in Taiwan's history. Meanwhile, the police tried to hunt down the attackers, but soon realized they had almost nothing. Airport staff showed more than 20 suspicious foreigners entering and leaving the country between the 8th and 12th of July, but none carried large amounts of cash, which meant one thing: the money was still in Taiwan. However, there were no suspects, no traces, and no clear leads. And without knowing what to look for, surveillance cameras were useless. The case was suddenly paralyzed. But then, police received a call on July 11th. Taiwanese authorities got notice of a street confrontation at an ATM in Taipei. A resident had grown suspicious of a foreigner taking too long at the machine. When he looked closer, he saw what was happening: large cash withdrawals, one after another. A money mule. He quickly called the police. The money mule noticed and tried to run away, but the resident tried to block his escape. In the end, the mule fled the scene, but on his rushed escape, he left something behind: a credit card. This single mistake changed everything. They had their first real suspect on the table: Sergei Berezovsky. He was one of the money mules who had entered the country during the first week of July. Sergei himself had left Taiwan just hours after the incident, but he had made yet another critical mistake. He had arranged for his hotel deposit to cover for friends arriving the following days. Jackpot. The police started monitoring the hotel and soon identified Sergei's friends: a couple of foreigners traveling with several suitcases. Surveillance cameras tracked them in different locations with the same suitcases. Eventually, their movements led to a locker in Taipei's train station. That's where the money was. And from there, it was over. The police followed them back to their hotel and arrested them while they were enjoying an early lunch. Around the same time, a taxi driver located another money mule who had managed to dodge surveillance cameras for days. After seeing his face on the news, he panicked and tried to run away to the countryside with the cash. The taxi driver caught him during his rushed escape, and he was eventually arrested. In the end, police recovered 90% of the stolen money and returned it to the bank. The three men were all sentenced to 4 to 5 years in prison. After the heist scandal died down, Taiwanese authorities started the investigation. They confiscated 41 ATMs and examined them for malware. All of them were clean, but the Taiwanese police had a down. Taiwanese authorities started the investigation. They confiscated 41 ATMs and examined them for malware. All of them were clean, but the Taiwanese police had a hunch, so they kept digging. And eventually, they hit the jackpot. One of the ATMs had not been wiped properly and still contained traces of the Trojan. This gave the forensic team the clues they needed to trace back the attack to the First Commercial Bank, one of the largest banks in Taiwan. The attack began in late May in FCB's London branch when attackers accessed the bank's voice recording system from an IP address in Switzerland. From there, they breached the system, stole the administrator's credentials, and took control of the bank's intranet. Once inside, they infected internal servers and corrupted files related to cash dispensing and trace wiping. This would allow them to trigger the ATM withdrawals while automatically deleting digital evidence of the tampering. Then, they breached employee computers at the bank's headquarters in Taiwan. From there, they escalated privileges and gained access to something called Application Server Frameworks, the system responsible for sending updates to ATMs. With this move, attackers could not only control these systems, but also deliver their own updates to the machines. These updates would help to establish a connection between hackers' computers and the ATMs. So now, they could control the ATMs from their own updates to the machines. These updates would help to establish a connection between hackers' computers and the ATMs. So now they could control the ATMs from anywhere in the world. All that money mules had to do was go to a specific location, call the attackers, and wait for the money to pour out. The Taiwan heist revealed an uncomfortable truth. Despite more than 10,000 surveillance cameras, strong coordination among authorities, and highly trained cyber professionals, the heist had only been discovered because of eyewitnesses. If the mules had been more experienced and careful, they might have escaped with millions. And if a police force as ready as the Taiwanese had been able to miss it, something was not right. So they decided to escalate the case and take its findings to Europol. And soon, they discovered Taiwan was only a small piece of a much larger story. This was the work of Carbanak, a cybercriminal organization that international authorities had been unsuccessfully hunting down for years. The thing is, due to Taiwan's diplomatic status, they had remained outside of Europol's operational network, which meant outside of Carbanak's loop. But the Taiwan heist changed everything. Europol reactivated the joint investigation and turned its attention to Taiwan. Perhaps they had been wrong all along. Perhaps the key to the entire operation did not lie so much in the infrastructure, but in the human factor of it all. And with the money mules behind bars, they had a good chance of hunting the mastermind of the operation. Perhaps the key to the entire operation did not lie so much in the infrastructure, but in the human factor of it all. And with the money mules behind bars, they had a good chance of hunting the mastermind of the operation. In 2015, the Spanish police began tracking down a suspicious individual on the Mediterranean coast. After Europol uncovered Carbanak, authorities had been closely monitoring the region, hoping to find clues about the criminal group. During that time, they noticed a Ukrainian man with loose connections to Romanian and Moldovan organized crime gangs. After Europol uncovered Carbanak, authorities had been closely monitoring the region, hoping to find clues about the criminal group. During that time, they noticed a Ukrainian man with loose connections to Romanian and Moldovan organized crime gangs. This was particularly suspicious. Carbanak was known to rely on money mules from those countries. But aside from that, nothing was blatantly illegal. He lived with his family in a luxurious apartment, owned an expensive car, barely spoke Spanish, and was rarely seen by neighbors, the usual wealthy expat profile. So, without any concrete evidence, the case went cold. But a year later, Europol reached out again. Taiwanese authorities had discovered an email chain on one of the money mule's devices. One address led to a man living in Spain, Dennis K. Reached out again. Taiwanese authorities had discovered an email chain on one of the money mule's devices. One address led to a man living in Spain, Dennis K., the same man Spanish police had been keeping a watchful eye on. The case was reopened, and under close investigation, it became clear that Dennis was not acting alone. He had 3 other accomplices, and together they managed a massive criminal organization, Carbanak. Each member had a specific role. Dennis himself was in charge of designing this, and together they had a watchful eye on. The case was reopened, and under close investigation, it became clear that Dennis was not acting alone. He had 3 other accomplices, and together they managed a massive criminal organization, Carbanak. Each member had a specific role. Dennis himself was in charge of designing the malware and moving laterally through banking networks. The others handled critical tasks such as creating fraudulent transactions, running phishing campaigns, and remotely controlling infected computers. Their infrastructure was carefully built and maintained using the money from the attacks. And speaking of attacks, Carbanak would get 30 to 40% of the profits, sometimes up to 50%, if they had to fly mules to specific countries. Then 10% of the profits would go to their infrastructure and another 5% to cryptocurrency exchanges, operational tools, and contractors. In the end, each core member would score 10% per attack, and that share may have been reduced due to internal disputes with mafias and questionable cryptocurrency projects. Despite these financial hiccups, Dennis accumulated around $2 million, which went straight in his pocket. The Spanish police were slowly building a case, but they still lacked legal authority. That was until attackers made yet another mistake. At the beginning of 2017, they launched an operation in Madrid, extracting around $4 million from ATMs. Although the targeted bank was not Spanish, the attack provided the grounds needed to wiretap Dennis's communications and gather the evidence needed for his arrest. A more extensive investigation revealed several interesting details. First, Dennis was laundering his money through a Bitcoin warehouse in China and had already converted most of his cash into Bitcoin. Secondly, and most importantly, he was preparing to leave Carbanak behind. The location revealed several interesting details. First, Dennis was laundering his money through a Bitcoin warehouse in China and had already converted most of his cash into Bitcoin. Secondly, and most importantly, he was preparing to leave Carbanak behind. He was developing Carbanak 2.0, a more sophisticated malware designed to target cryptocurrency firms. Apparently, the project was in its late stages and had already been tested at several banking institutions. Whether he believed jackpotting had become too risky or simply wanted a new challenge is unclear. But by March, it no longer mattered. The Spanish police had enough evidence to identify Dennis as the head of Carbanak, and that same month, they stormed Dennis's apartment and arrested him. They seized his laptop, retrieved around $162 million, and confiscated jewelry and 2 BMWs in his name. The head of Carbanak had fallen, and without its architect, the machine had no direction, no structure, and no future. Carbanak was the first hacking organization to turn jackpotting into a real business. Its methods were innovative for the time, especially the use of legitimate penetration testing tools like Cobalt Strike. But perhaps the most impactful thing about Carbanak is that they managed to steal $100 million worldwide, operating almost undetected for nearly 3 years. And what makes this whole scheme even more mind-blowing is that their attacks weren't technically groundbreaking. Most intrusions began with simple phishing emails and malware that exploited a couple of minor vulnerabilities. In many cases, those vulnerabilities had already been patched, and if the banks had kept up with updates, perhaps none of this would have happened. But Carbanak didn't rely on technical brilliance. It succeeded because they mastered observation and adaptation. They studied their victims, learned how banking systems worked, and replicated their patterns perfectly. This, combined with the mediocre defense systems of many banks, made Carbanak the perfect operation. Their legacy is clearly visible in several other criminal groups. For example, Metal refined ATM fraud by automating the rollback of ATM transactions. This essentially allows criminals to withdraw large amounts of cash while the balance remained unchanged. Another group, GC Man, focused on lateral movement and espionage inside corporate networks, using legitimate tools to transfer money to e-currency services. But if there is a group that took direct inspiration from Carbanak and filled its gaps on the scene, it is Fin7. In fact, their methods are so similar that researchers have linked them together, especially because Fin7 reused Carbanak's backdoor and elevated it with more sophisticated malware. The group became especially active in the United States, hacking thousands of computer systems and stealing millions of credit and debit card numbers. Then, in 2019, researchers noticed something. Carbanak's source code had been uploaded to VirusTotal, a platform used to analyze malware. This raised alarm bells and shocked many researchers. Perhaps Carbanak is not really over. Perhaps somewhere another group started refining Carbanak, making it faster, more sophisticated, and completely undetectable. Just think about it. Carbanak was a pioneer in 2013. It's been more than 10 years. The crime scene has evolved and malware is as sophisticated as ever. If its source code has indeed been refined into the ultimate Swiss Army knife, will we ever find out about the biggest cyber heist in history? Thank you for watching. Let us know if you'd like us to cover other major banking hacker groups, or perhaps look into other famous heists in history. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your support is what truly helps us push through.